Hey guys, I'm Farrukh Ahmed. I'm a productivity and optimization coach, and I also host a podcast with my wife called the Reframe Podcast that focuses on inspiration and motivation. So check that out as well. And welcome to the Pivotal Show.
Hey everybody, my name is Zohair Heather. I am the founder of Digital Street and I'm also working on another startup. I'm going to keep saying this until it actually launches, so boohoo. And I'm really excited about today's show because we're talking to someone who's actually not in Dubai for a change.
Hello, everybody. My name is Seksek, and I am a serial entrepreneur. And I'm currently the CEO of Rainmaking Innovations for both MENA and Russia. And we help a lot of companies scale, and we also run accelerators by running our company brand named Startup Bootcamp. And today we have one of my close friends and a very good entrepreneur. I know he told me not to introduce him as a serial entrepreneur, so I'm just going to say a founder of many companies and currently the CEO of Nestrom, Yousef. Welcome, Yousef.
Thanks. It's a pleasure being here. So my name is Yousef Wadi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nestrom. I've been in this space, creating startups since I would easily say 2011. My background is a computer engineer. My first startup was in hardware. Unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere. Reason B is hardware is not easy, and hardware in the region is not even easy at all, especially in 2011 back then, even though we got the literal support of Bill Gates back then. And we were 6 founders, which is going to be interesting to talk about, co-founders and stuff. And then from there, moved into corporate companies, Microsoft, Yahoo, and also worked in creating multiple startups, whether I'm a founding partner or an actual co-founder that has an operational job there, all the way from Bilforon, we had Arabia Weather, and right now Nostrum is the latest. Thank God all of them are up and running. All of them are looking good, but times like nowadays, the COVID-19 thing is making everyone rethink strategies, I guess.
That's correct. So we're talking about co-founders today, and I just wanted to, I know you've mentioned that your first startup had 6 co-founders, and I know my first my first 2 startups had 4 co-founders as well. So tell us, good idea, bad idea. What went wrong? What happened? Last man standing.
Yeah, that's what. Eventually, it looks like last man standing. I think the whole company wasn't doing that well back then. It was called Oasis before Oasis 500 here in Jordan, and it started off as a competition for Microsoft. We managed to get 3rd place globally when MENA never made it to the World Finals. They literally lost their minds. Like the regional heads of Microsoft lost their minds. It was blowing up. We got a meeting set up with Bill Gates in Switzerland. We got funded, and we started taking the project to the next level. 6 partners as a competition is one story. 6 co-founders is a completely different ballgame. What's the good news was at the beginning, I guess you can write books about that first startup and how things went wrong, but when you look at it from the first point of view, the good part was everyone had a specific role. So I was the hardware guy, and we had a software guy, we had the marketing guy, we had like the whole packaging and everything was figured out. The problem was technology moved so fast that the second we started getting close to production, things started to look bad. And we were like, okay, do we switch strategies or not? We had pressure from Microsoft going like, oh, look at our new technology. There's this new chipset. Take a look at it. We were utilizing Nintendo's chipset back then, and they were like, take a look at this one. Well, yeah, it makes sense. And that was basically the first divide. And because it's moving so fast, everyone was like, okay, do we go out with what we have right now, or do we look at the new chipset and change it? And then literally that's when 3 against 3 was going on. It was like, which direction should we take? And then eventually the money was not enough. Because what we decided was one of the stupidest decisions we ever made was like, okay, 3 of us will work on the old chipset and the new guys will work on the new chipset. And what happened is we went very, very, we spread ourselves very thin and got nowhere. And we ran out of money. Part of the agreement was to open source the hardware if it never worked out. So we just open sourced it and everyone moved on. We just literally shut down the company, and everyone, like one guy went to Microsoft, another guy went to Facebook. I started a couple of companies here, and yeah, it's like everyone went into a different direction at that point. So that was basically that story. But if you look at the other startups, it's a different story. There's a lot of psychology in this, and there's a lot of external variables, and people don't. I'm gonna get heat for this, but I don't believe people change, or at least they don't change in the first 10 years. Like it takes 10 years to 15 years to actually see change. And the difference is that people say, "Oh, he changed in the last 2 years." No, variables changed, and you saw a new face to that person. And the question is about ethics. If you have the right, like even like all the startups, if I left them, I could easily tell you, even if I had disagreements with the co-founders or the partners that we had, it was always peaceful. So there was no actual battle or war or shouting going on or whatever. It was basically a disagreement. And that disagreement would, there's a way you can solve it. It's either I agree and we're going to go in that direction, or I disagree and you know what, let's figure out how we're going to deal with this in the next steps. So you would think I wouldn't do the 6 co-founder thing again. Nestrum, we have 4. But the thing is I learned from the last time is that when you have 6, it's a bit too many. But the good news was, because everyone was handling a certain vertical, we managed to get literally complex hardware, software developed. And it gave us, and we weren't burning cash like crazy. It was like we like a lot of our work was looked at. Carnegie Mellon University was taking a look at it. There was a lot of universities looking into it. We actually lost 3rd place to the 2nd place, was MIT. And at that point, that's okay. If you actually build the right focus, you get there. So in Nestrum, we're 4 guys. We just had a recent co-founder join us. And if you look at all 4 of us, completely different backgrounds. Even though we're all in tech, but the way we dealt with tech is different. So we have one guy that is mobile focused, software, like CI, DevOps. He's all the way in. I'm more on the technology and product side. We got one guy in operations. He figures out software and operations and how we get operations done. One guy that's completely commercial. And we one of the things that I've learned on that step is what we need to do is you have to make roles clear. And you need to know, the first thing we put out there was an accountability and responsibility matrix. And if everyone agrees to that from day one, it's an easy ride forward. I mean, that's it. It's like, well, I'm accountable for it. You can count me in an hour, in a year's time. If we fail and I fail this, then yeah, sure. But it comes down to also trust. You have to have the capability of letting go, putting trust in a certain person, and it's like it's your responsibility. I'm not going to jump in on this. We'll help you. You need help, we'll be happy to help you. But again, it comes down to bringing the right person on board. And for Nestrum, we've been through some serious pivots. And when I say serious pivots, I mean we went from one industry to a completely different industry, with agriculture to everything else. And that alone was a major risk. And I remember a lot of the investors we had were like, you're going to have problems with your co-founders. One of our co-founders was a bit worried about, are we going to have to do this? Do we really need to do this? What was easy, we sat on one table, we put the numbers there, we just spread them out there. It's like, anyone have any other idea on how to make this work without pivoting? Chip in now. And when there's no answer, I think the answer is easy. Everyone's like, you know what? Yeah, let's take a look at something else. And then everyone just moved towards it. Again, it comes back to ethics and trust. And so who's the people you're dealing with, and what kind of psychology they have? And as a lead, you need to understand psychology to a certain extent. I remember I had a friend in Finland. He was a DJ. He's still a DJ in Finland. It was Cliff. So this guy, he was a PhD in psychology. He's one of the best DJs in Finland. And he was always telling me that's where, like people say I don't work with my degree, but I would beg to differ. I mean, that's what I'm doing. And if you look at him, he knows how to move a crowd, and he knows how to change like the mood in a second. And he could literally, I'm not joking, subliminal messages, and goes like, watch me do this. And it would change the way things would react. And with that was in 2008. And it just continued in my head thinking about it. It's like, if you understand the person and psychology behind him, it's a lot easier to manage things.
The co-founders that you that you were with in your first. Have you ever worked with them again?
So one of them, yes, I did, but others, no. So within these 4 startups, you could easily say, I'm just trying to count them. So we have 6 here and 4 there. That's already 11. Sorry, 10. And then you have 1, 2, 3. So around 13 to 14 in total of the people I've worked within 4 or 5 companies that were co-founders or founders or partners of some sort in the company. Not all of them, no. A lot of, like, sometimes, so as a simple example, sometimes when I started Nestrum, leaving Arabia Weather, you get to a point where you're weighing in a couple of things. The first thing you're weighing in is that itch I have for Nestrum right now, is it big enough for me to move on from whatever I have? And the question is how big is the thing you're in? And with my background in computer engineering and you know, core tech, it's kind of hard for me to sit there and become, you know, another, I was just like CTO that just sits there and, you know, just build strategies and budgets and you like go figure things out. It's not really me. And you come to certain, and you don't want, and the last thing you want is a founder that's still sitting there writing code. And you know, I understand that. And at the same time, in Arabia Weather, we built our own database management system. And I had an awesome team that was building that. It was specifically for weather. We used to call it the nth gridded multi-dimensional geospatial database. So that's the scientific name of it. And it was basically to manage weather data that was never, you know, you can never handle, like normal databases, you'll need major data centers to handle. And that was a fun project. But the question starts is after that, when you get into commercial, how big is my role now? How important is it? What kind of relationship do I have with other partners right now? And then you start thinking about it as well. It's all commercial. And if I don't have the capability, and I shouldn't have the willingness to step on other people's toes and going into their commercial businesses. But at a certain point, you go like, is that Nestrum itch in my head a lot bigger than what I already have right now? And then you would say, okay, I want to do this or I want to stay. And that's what normally happens. And Nestrum continued to grow up and grow in my head and meeting a lot of people. And then I've met, I know Kanaan for years. So Kanaan Manasa was one of the co-founders, and he's one of the people that started the Jordan Open Source Association. I know him from years and how he used to manage data and the open data in Jordan and, you know, project management. I used to work for MXD for a while. And then it was like, you know what, let's kick this off. We got Shadi on board, which used to work with me in Arabia Weather, used to run the mobile division. And he already left when I was there. He left to another company. And when I started Nestrum, I was like, Shadi, do you want to come and join us here? And the last edition was Zaid Abdul Hadi. And Zaid is like 14 years experience. I don't know if you know him, Zaid Abdul Hadi. Yeah. So he just joined us recently, and he's handling the commercial part in the UAE right now. He's an awesome guy. And getting in a late stage co-founder is a tricky scenario, whether with investors or even your own partners. But again, comes down to...
So did Zaid come in after the pivot?
Yeah.
Because that's a very interesting question to ask, is like, so you had to pivot and now you had to add another co-founder, right? Or because you had to address something.
It was going to happen whether we pivoted or not. So one thing that we all like, this is what I like about Shadi and Kanaan. The way we function together is that we agree almost on anything. And I don't mean agree as in, you know, let's let it pass by. No, we have our heated debates, but we come to a certain agreement at the end of the day. And one of the agreements that like 3 of us had is like, well, we're building a very multidisciplinary co-founder structure, and we know that each one of us has that strength. We all suck at sales, period. And we know that we can sell. I mean, we've done it. We've done it with big companies. Before Zaid joined, we managed to close some of the biggest deals in the biggest country, like the biggest businesses in the region. But we didn't know how to continue scaling it up. And we had no clue. And then, especially in the B2B. So if you come to me and you tell me, can you do this to the B2C? I've been in B2C for all my life and I can do that easily. But when I look at B2B, I'm like, different ballgame. I thought it was easy at the beginning. And we started, and it's a different ballgame. We managed to continue to sell. And then when we met Zaid was helping us out as a consultant for a while. So the team got to know him, the partners got to know him. And after they got to know him, we were all on the same page. He flew to Amman, he met the guys, everyone was on the same page. And then we decided, you know what, we're going to need this. And we're going to need someone that knows how to build proper sales structures and commission-based methodologies and the pipeline, how we should manage the pipeline, how fast the pipeline should work, and how do we reduce sales cycles, and all those stories that, you know, we only read in books to us. He's been doing it for 14 years. So there was an agreement that, yeah, we're going to get him on board. And when we did that, it was very beneficial. So far, it looks it looks great. If you would ask me what I would worry about in the future of Nestrum, would be a board of directors. And that's when things are going to get touchy-feely right now.
You don't have a board of directors right now?
I'm the only guy. Let's just say I managed.
Makes it a lot easier, I have to say. It makes it a lot easier.
It makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier.
At least you don't have any conflicts, right?
No, I don't. And
you're going to drag along rights.
Yeah, exactly. So, and by the way, the drag along rights, I've seen them a couple of times screw up a lot of companies. And one of the interesting things about it is we do have a non-formal structured board, and we utilize it for sanity of the decision making. And we actually call up our investors and tell them we want to meet with you guys and we need some direction. And we selected our investors in a very, very tricky manner. I mean, if you look at everyone we have on board, it's not the usual suspects. I would assume, like, one of them that everyone knows is Wamda. And Wamda was on board because of the awesome relationship we had since Arabia Weather. And I mean, when I left Arabia Weather, it was great to see how much appreciation they had for the technology we built, and they were interested to know what we're going to do next. And they was like, "We're like, count us in when you're ready." And we have 500 startups as well. And then we had for the pivot, we went to Techstars, and we managed to get into Techstars and to do the pivot, and then, you know, clean things out. And we had a lot of questions from the board and you know, the investors going like, "Why do you need Techstars at this point?" It's like, if you look at the psychology that we're in right now, it's a complete mess. And if we don't clean it out, we're going nowhere. And the great part about it was basically just like, someone pushed format and we just started all over. And we did like 3 or 4 major pivots internally within Techstars before we had anything launched again. But that's a good time to do it. And then we got to where we are right now, which is, thank God, we're actually growing sales, growing numbers. Product looks awesome. The product last estimate is in like a 1.8 million valuation. Like, I don't want to, like they say, you don't want to blow your own whistle, but we managed to get deals out of the bag of Oracle. We managed to get certain companies to drop Oracle, come to our product, or drop SAP and just move into our product. And it feels very good after a major struggle with the pivot as well. And one of the things that we're talking about, the board and investors and so on, one of our investors is an agricultural business investor. They have investment from their company and from a personal investment. And you know how hard it is to try to talk to that person and tell them that we're going to pivot out of agriculture. And I was so like, it was the thing that was consuming my mind, is how do I pick up the phone and tell them we're going to do this? And believe it or not, when I picked up the phone and I called up Omar, and he was like, "Well, do what's right." He goes like, "Oh, did you try this? Yeah. Did you try that? Yeah. Well, yeah, we know you went to Egypt. We tried to help you with that. Yeah. How did that go? It didn't go well." And he goes like, "Yeah, we'll do what's right for the business." And that's when, you know, I felt for the first time, like, choosing your right investors and is critical. It is extremely critical, because believe it or not, I would easily say 90% of fights that happen between founders comes down from the board or the investors themselves. It's basically, no, this is what happens. I've seen it in 5 companies, whether it's one that I'm involved in or not. And what happens is, normally there's a board of directors that at a certain point split decisions. All right. And then we one of our startups, I don't want to mention which one, we actually had a problem where everyone was like focus on this business model, and someone else jumps in on the other direction. And the problem here is, the guy that's saying go right has an extreme background in going right, and you can't say no. And the guy that's saying go left has an awesome background on how to go left. And the problem is now you as founders sitting there in the boardroom going like, well, you know what? I think right is right. And then your co-founder sitting there going, left makes sense. And the second you leave that boardroom, that's when you and your co-founder is going to start heated debates. And if there's no way both of them are going to come to a certain an agreement saying, yeah, we both agree that this is how it's going to look like, then I don't see how that's going to move on. And the smart thing at this point is one of the co-founders should at least think of stepping down, and in a smart manner. Like sit there, talk to your partner, talk to the board, be very clear about it, and then decide, you know what, yeah, I think it's time to move on. When I decided I wanted to move away from Arabia Weather to Nostrum, I made it very clear to the board of directors that I literally got to a point where I'm redundant. And this is one thing I think all founders should work towards. You need to make yourself redundant. And when I got to a point where I felt redundant, I was sent them an email saying, believe it or not, if I'm in the company or out the company at this point, for my role or what I'm doing right now in the company or your expectations from me in this company, I have the team that could continue this without my presence. Or at least, when they start hiring and the new generation comes in, the third generation comes in, that's it. There's a certain mentality that continues to streamline the company. At the end of the day, I still have shares and equity in that company. The last thing you want is that company to sink as well. So it has to become a very sound business decision, putting emotions on a side. And this is one thing that I always tell partners is
but Yusuf, in your experience, what is the main reason for this fallout? Because you see, startups are, the way I like to put it, pretty much like bands. Everybody's having fun, enjoying, going through the bases, the problems and everything, and then suddenly, Joey quits and Jimmy quits and Joey gets married.
Melinda has a baby.
Yeah.
So basically, if you think of it as a band, the startup until Series A is a garage band. It's just having fun, kicking it in the garage, It's
but
like
where does the fallout happen, and is it ego behind
Stakeholders. Stakeholders come in. So I've seen certain scenarios where it's ego. Thank God I've never been there. I've never been in an ego battle with anyone. But I've seen ego problems get to a point where people were shouting and throwing shit at each other in the office.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. This is actually quite common. And this comes down to psychology. And then this is, I think, comes down to choosing the wrong person in the first place. Believe it or not, when I interview employees in the company, let alone founders, I intentionally try to piss them off. And when I see the reaction, I'm done with it, I tell them I did that intentionally. And I'm sorry if I pissed you off, but I really need to know how you're going to react to this. And it's the easiest way. Yeah. So basically it happened. Like one guy flipped the table at me. He flipped the table at me and started shouting because I tried to provoke him with certain technical questions. And when I was done with it, I was like, by the way, I want you to read what I wrote on the paper before I said, because before I do that, I write something on the paper and tell him I wrote something on the paper. I will show you when I'm done. And then I just showed him the paper saying that it said that I'm trying to provoke you to see how you're going to react. And everyone goes and sits down like that and just decides, like, now you can go to your CV and remove works under pressure easily. And this is typical of, dealing with your co-founders. I mean, the guys from Nostrum, Shadi, Kanan, we spent 4 months in the same apartment in Dubai. It gets heated, man. It's just that you're not just going to work together. You're going home with them and you're staying in the same house. And they would start shouting at me, stop talking about work, because I'm like 11 at night going like, what do you think about this? And it's like, we just disconnect. We just got home. It's like, it's already 9. Just stop talking. And you get into these heated problems. And the question is how do you resolve them? What happens after that? What happens when the third person, what does the third person do? And one thing that I like about these guys is that if, for an assumption, Kanan and I get into a fight, Shadi is going to be the reasonable guy going in between us. He's not siding with anyone. And the same thing goes with Shadi. If I get into a fight with Shadi, Kanan's the sound of reason at this point. And if they're going to get into a fight, that's what I'm going to be in between, trying to solve the problem, not make the problem worse.
When are you the voice of reason?
I don't think I am. I'm the guy that pivots shit all the time in the company. I'm the guy that. Go ahead.
So I'm going through an experience. So there's a startup that I've been working on for eons, and I tried finding a co-founder. I found somebody, turned out to be a terrible idea, didn't work out, ended up having to, sort of say farewell. And it was a really frustrating sort of an activity because I found out through this course of exercises and workshops, we were trying to sort of restructure the business a little bit. Basically, just doom and gloom, but never anything materializing. It was and he was a technical co-founder. And then I had to go through that whole exercise again. And it took me a year to find the first one. It took me another year to find another person who I'm now currently engaged with. And so far, fingers crossed, it's going really well. Based here in Dubai as well. In fact, before it was out in Pakistan. And so I can be a really frustrating person to work with. And I really need to ask you this because you've worked with so many groups of people. You have such a blend of personalities involved. Everyone at some point wants to have either their 15 minutes or they want to be heard in a way that is loud and makes a difference in the direction or the way of the company's taking. But is it cathartic at some point to be able to sort of just speak your mind, or do you think it's more an ego-driven thing that can kind of get out of hand? Is there a balance between how much? Because I feel like, I mean, you need to shed some skin, right? It's like family. I mean, if you don't have a fight, you're not going to get through. You're not going to get.
It's not a family.
It's not family, right? So there's got to be a fight, right?
Yeah, and it's gonna happen. I mean, there's the book Good to Great, if you ever read it. I love that book. There's a couple of points in it and says that if your board meeting doesn't look like a war zone, then I don't know what you're doing. And it's actually a good thing, because if everyone's trying to be politically correct at this point, what are you doing? I mean, what are you gonna solve? You're not going to say, you're going to be very, very gentle about how to poke into technology because you don't want to hurt the CTO's feeling, and the CTO doesn't want to poke into you because he doesn't want to say, oh, you don't know what's your vision. We have no direction. And if it's a lot easier. I mean, Shadi came to me certain times and goes like, what the hell are we doing? What's the direction of the company? And I don't take it personal. If I'm really objective, I would sit there and go like, yeah, what the hell am I doing with the company? And I would actually try to figure it out with the guys. And it's the same thing. I just pick up the phone and it's like, Shadi, the system's just falling apart. What's going on? And he goes like, oh, I was like, we'll figure it out. We're dealing with it. And there's no sense of authority. And this is to get to your point about ego. When I select a co-founder, one thing that I always do is I think of it differently. Is would I want him to manage me? Everyone else thinks of it differently. They go like, do I want to manage him?
Yeah.
And what happens when you put yourself in the other shoes? You start thinking about, oh shit, he has an ego. I don't want him managing me.
Insecurities
and problems. Like, you need to think of him what if he's your manager? And that's a lot easier for you to like work together, because eventually I don't like looking at co-founder structures to become someone managing someone. If it's someone managing someone at the beginning, just hire someone for it and you don't get him on board. And everyone else does that, it's like, well, they think of it as cheap labor. And it's like, unfortunately, a lot of people think, I'll get a technical co-founder because it's cheap labor. I can give him half the salary and tell him you're going to get equity. They don't think about it as like, no, he's your partner. And you see that problem emerge so many times in Series A and post-Series A, it becomes ridiculous. Because at a certain point in Series A, now you're thinking about scaling your business. And all you're thinking about is sales, revenue, and revenue, and what's your cost of acquisition, and so on and so forth. And if you have a person with insecurities...
There's a fear factor in scaling your business as well. It doesn't come easy, right? Yeah.
Of course, there's and the problem is that, for example, the CTO...
Somebody's going to get wobbly legs in there.
And someone's going to feel left out. Like the CTO, you'll always see the technical person leave around Series A. Go check out all the startups that, that had a CTO that left. They're somewhere before, like pre-Series A, Series A, or just before Series B. And the reason is because they don't have that importance anymore. And if they have that insecurity of, we need to be on the top of the world, then it's bad for you. You can't stay in that company because you just want to be the center of attention. It's not going to be good for business. And there's another problem to it. There's also a downplay of a lot of board members in multiple startups in the region for technology. If you're building a technology company and you're downplaying technology as well, I don't know what the hell you're doing. And that's a problem. And that's a major problem. And I've seen this in multiple occasions where I go like, oh yeah, you know what? Stop thinking about the technology. We'll figure this shit out. And I'm not going to mention a startup, but there was a startup that almost got to Series B and plugs were pulled left, right, and center. And things hit the fan badly because of what? Technology turns out it wasn't scalable. And after they sold tons and tons and tons of subscriptions, and then they go like, oh, now we can't scale up beyond 800, 1,000. Well, you just raised a ton of money. You just raised a couple of millions. And now they're like, oh, the board doesn't want to reinvest in technology. We put this money in because we want to see growth in sales, not to redevelop the technology. Well, then that's what happens when you downplay tech. And that's what happens because, honestly speaking, I don't want to see someone come and say, I'm going to start the best automotive industry, the best automotive company in this industry that is going to build supercars, and he has no freaking clue how an engine works. And I'm not telling you he needs to build an engine. At least know how it freaking works.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of things I wanted to say, and I didn't want to interrupt you because there's two main topics that I would like to reopen that you said earlier. One is making yourself redundant, because I've done that many times in the companies I've started myself, and I think I like that. I've been doing it for a while, and I think because I know I have issues with commitment when it comes to businesses. You know what I mean? I'm usually fired up in the beginning, and then 2-3 years down the road, I'll be like, I want to do something new, or I want to add a new feature or a new product, but the business is growing so well that you really don't want to, sabotage what you have right now. So that's why you say, you know what, I'll just hire somebody, or we'll find a co-founder, or usually hire somebody, and then, and you slowly
transition out
of that, But that's very, very important, because I've seen people pivot just to make themselves redundant as well, right? So they would say, okay, you know what? This is clearly not working. We need to pivot into this. The data's telling us this, but I know nothing about this new space. So maybe I'm just going to hire a CEO. And believe me, like even at, start a Bootcamp, some of our companies globally, we've seen founders step down and hire a CEO because, their data shows it's going somewhere that they're not comfortable in leading or adding any value. So that's something as well that is very, very important. I know not in Coma, but technically you as a founder would step down to bring in another person. So that's something also very, very common. And I've seen quite a bit. I've done it myself, at least can remember 3 times. The other issue that I also want to bring up, family businesses. Okay.
Oh,
when you're in business with your brother, father, uncle,
that's for life.
You know what I mean? And you're pivoting, and I've seen some family businesses because, there's this concept of a phoenix. I don't know if you guys know what a phoenix is. A phoenix is a company that's 200 years old. And the biggest phoenix on earth right now is Fiat, the car company. It's actually a family owned company. And they talk about, how the business was, passed on from one generation to another. And I can only imagine what goes along, especially in boardrooms when you're running a company that big, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of companies, usually by second or third generation family businesses are either, put on a trust or, sold off, because family businesses usually don't, they don't last past the third generation because of a lot of reasons, right?
Yeah.
And now we're seeing family businesses with the kid coming on board, pivoting the whole entire business, or he wants to have a nice tech angle to it, or wants to modernize the business or automate or whatever. So,
and the family wants to keep on going the traditional way.
Of course. And that's, where you have the older generation usually versus the newer generation, and they see, and then sadly what I've seen that, and that's one of the stories I've had is the old generation just trumps the lower generation, saying, well, we're older, we're wiser, we have that much more.
Now you're going to teach us
like,
how to do business. We've been doing it for 100 years.
Exactly.
By the way, a lot of our customers are like that, because we sell, we go to B2B businesses, and a lot of times they're family businesses, and selling to them is a different ballgame. I mean, you got the new guy coming in going like, we need new tech. We need to make this better. We need to make it more efficient. We need to think about things. And then we're like, oh, but we need to go back to my grandfather and say, okay.
Why do we need to change anything? It's all working fine. What's your problem?
Exactly. Why do we need to spend money on this software? We've been doing it for 100 years. I mean,
You're
why
telling me
change
I'm
it now?
wrong?
Exactly.
Or why can't we
Nothing to
just
do with
hire-
ego.
Why can't we just hire 2 technical guys in the back office here to build whatever?
Oh, they'll fix it. Yeah, they'll fix the problem. And you can play around with whatever you want in your garage and then tell me what happens. Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that a lot of times. And it's very rarely that you get people that will actually change. There are a couple of companies out there that I'm extremely interested about seeing how they're moving forward. A couple of family businesses that are turning into proper companies, and they know it. They know for a fact. It's like we're at the third generation tells you we're at generation 3. We need to make this into a company.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is very well needed in our whole area. You know what I mean? Like I think the founder of Kareem, when he was mentioning that in Pakistan, like Pakistan is almost 200 million people, right? If
220, yeah.
And it only has 1 unicorn, so like 1 billion evaluated company, but the market is so big. So why isn't that? It's because of this generational thing, because people either are not interested to work with their parents, you know what I mean, or they just don't want to be yes men, you know what I mean, because that's what happens.
Because you're not going in as a co-founder.
Yeah, exactly. You're going there either for respect, or you just want to carry the family legacy or something like that. And I think the first step is you have to like vet the person kind of mentally, socially, like you're comfortable with working with this person, right?
Psychologically, could it be of his friend and so on? Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. You know what I mean?